When Gianni Infantino ran for FIFA President in 2016, he ran on an anti-corruption ticket.
So the fight against corruption in sport and in football in particular, and let me say in FIFA as well, is our top priority.
Looking to succeed Sepp Blatter, this approach was hardly surprising. The problem was, the claims of corruption just haven't gone away.
Each was a top football official in their country, and each has been found guilty of racketeering.
We're disappointed with the verdict, as you can expect, and Mr. Naput is going to continue fighting, and we are exploring our options.
Banned by FIFA because of the failure of United TTFA to withdraw the court claim filed against FIFA.
The most recent FIFA representative under scrutiny is the president of the Confederation of African Football, Ahmad Ahmad, who, earlier this month, was suspended for 5 years by FIFA.
And the head of African football has been banned from the sport for 5 years. Ahmad Ahmad's been suspended for corruption. It comes just months before elections for the body, and the Malagasy had looked set for re-election.
In this episode, we ask, why has Ahmad Ahmad been suspended by FIFA? And why hasn't the corruption gone away? Another day, another FIFA corruption scandal.
And another ban, 5 years for the president of the African Football Confederation, CAF, who's been found guilty of violating 4 different articles of the Code of Ethics of FIFA.
Philippe Auclair is the England correspondent for France Football.
Not exactly the most unexpected of sanctions, but one whose timing is really very, very interesting for anybody who's interested in football governance.
So let's start with the details of Ahmad Ahmad's suspension. On Monday the 23rd of November, Ahmad was suspended from football for 5 years by FIFA. What was he suspended for?
Well, as I said, it's 4 counts. To be honest, it's difficult to be very precise because we do not have the full judgment yet. FIFA has got 60 days to pass on this judgment to Mr. Ahmad and his team. Obviously, we, the media, don't have access to it. Basically, what he's accused of is various, I would say, imaginative use of CAF finances is one. It's one way of describing it. We're pretty sure that they relate to the fact that a pilgrimage to Mecca, which Mr. Ahmad attended and invited a number of other dignitaries from African football, was paid with money from CAF, which is totally against the statutes. Mr. Ahmad is also accused of having played a murky role in the provision of equipment to CAF from a French, I wouldn't say manufacturer, a French company, Tactical Steel, which had absolutely no previous experience of doing that. There were also allegations of sexual abuse. I'm not aware that these have been taken into consideration at the moment. So what we're looking at is basically taking liberties with the finances of CAF. Until we've got the full judgment, if we ever get it, and we should, in another 2 months perhaps, we can only describe those in rather wide terms. But the 2 examples I gave you, be it Tactical Steel or the Umrah, the pilgrimage to Mecca, we know are at the heart of the matter.
The proceedings against Ahmad Ahmad began after charges were levelled against him by people from within the Confederation of African Football. How did these accusations come about?
In March 2019, I believe, a number of documents were leaked by people at quite a high echelon of CAF, of the Confederation, which reached a number of journalists who are specialized in investigating football politics matters. And my group, we were one of those. And this is how it started, basically. These documents had also been transmitted to the FIFA Chamber of Ethics by the same individuals. So we knew that the case had been open. The case had been open for something like 18 months. It's taken 18 months to come to a conclusion. which is in itself very, very interesting. It's amazing how FIFA can be very, very slow at times when it comes to deal with complaints. And the complaints came from a variety of people. I know of at least 3, and I believe there have been more. So the dossier had been with the Chamber of Ethics for quite a while. Then the investigation chamber, which is led by Mrs. Rojas, found a conclusion that Mr. Ahmad had been found guilty of serious breaches, passed on the recommendations to the Chamber of Judgment, and the Chamber of Judgment then banned Mr. Ahmad for 5 years.
The timing of this ban is quite important, isn't it?
Well, it's crucial because we've got a CAF presidential election coming at the beginning of March 2021. It's crucial because the candidacies, the bids, had to be registered with CAF by 12 November. And the Ahmad camp actually was really, really keen on having the decision reached before the bids were declared. And you have to say, I mean, the way FIFA has done it from the outside, you would say if they had wanted to be as damaging and vindictive as they could be, it's exactly the timing they would have chosen, even if the ban is, by the way, relatively light. The timing is not odd. It's a means to punish him as much as they possibly can. Because at the moment, even if Mr. Ahmad has put an appeal to CAS, Court of Arbitration for Sport, there's an executive committee of CAF on the 10th of December, which promises to be quite an interesting event. And basically, he can't campaign. As soon as he's suspended, he's declared his candidacy to succeed himself. He actually had, before this decision was made public by the FIFA Ethics Commission, he has had the written support of 46 of the 54 member associations of CAF who wanted him to be a candidate again. And so we were expecting quite an easy re-election with perhaps one almost symbolic candidate. And then suddenly, wow, so Ahmad's been punished. Therefore, the road is open. Come on, guys, go for it. And the result is that we have now 5 candidates for the presidency, which is totally unheard of.
Ahmad has been blighted by corruption allegations throughout his tenure, which he has repeatedly denied. In 2019, he was arrested during a FIFA Congress in Paris on the eve of the Women's World Cup.
As you've already mentioned, this isn't the first time that Ahmad Ahmad has been in trouble with the law. In June 2019, he was arrested and questioned by French investigators about corruption allegations. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
We've got to be very careful with the words we use here because the choice of words is actually crucial. He hasn't been charged with anything yet. The investigation is ongoing. The investigation has to do with Tactical Steel, this company which is based in the south of France and which specializes in gym equipment and is part of a group of companies which belong to a guy, Mr. Cellier, who specializes in steelworks. Now, this company has never dealt ever with football equipment before or since. And they landed these massive contracts from December 2017 onwards, which saw them actually jump ahead of the queue in front of a Puma in particular, which sounds completely crazy. I mean, for a company that nobody knew about and suddenly found itself charged with procuring kits for the African Championship of Nations, which is the African competition, which is reserved to footballers who are active in Africa, not the ones who are, working in European or Asian football or American football. There was also 60,000 footballs were delivered. There were also the equipments for Futsal World Cup, African Cup of Nations, a women's competition, for an under-17 competition. And all in all, these people from Tactical Steel, whose setup, by the way, is extremely baffling when you go into the detail of it. So they got these contracts, and it was genuinely the President Ahmad intervened personally to make things happen for them. How he was linked to these people, I mean, it's a very long story and complicated and fascinating, which we tried to tell in Josima, the online Norwegian magazine. So if you want to know more about the detail, and believe me, some of it is quite funky, go to Josima and you have a look at what we wrote. So this is what he was interrogated about, because, the French investigators were wondering if there had been tax evasion, fraud, fraudulent payments or whatever, because suddenly the income of that company, which was very, very modest, went into the millions of dollars. And the sole customer, and I mean the sole customer, was CAF. You can go to the website of that company and you will not see this relationship with CAF advertised anywhere on their website. You would have thought that to be the prime procurer of equipment to one of the world's great football organizations would be a badge of honor, a badge of pride, and that it would be all over the website. No. It's not even mentioned. So it doesn't mean that per se that there is something seriously wrong going on, but it certainly has made the French authorities very curious about what exactly was the setup. An investigation was open. Mr. Ahmad was arrested and questioned by French police during the FIFA Congress in June 2019. I can tell you I was in Paris for the Congress and in the hotel where almost all of the African delegates were staying. And it was a scene like you've never seen when we heard that he'd been arrested. It was astonishing. Also, quite tellingly, I remember listening to Mr. Infantino speaking, because it was the re-election, of course, of Mr. Infantino, which happened in Paris. And in one of his speeches, he mentioned the fact that FIFA would basically take no prisoners when it came to people who were playing fast and loose with the code of ethics. And given what had just happened, I think we all understood that, my dear Mr. Ahmad, I think you might be in some trouble at some point.
There have been rumours of widespread corruption in the Confederation of African Football for a while now. The full extent of the problems originally came to light after an audit carried out around a year ago by the accountancy firm PricewaterhouseCoopers. What did this audit find?
I think what it found is that a complete mayhem in terms of the way that the money was spent. Money being sent directly to the bank accounts of presidents of FAs, and money being given in cash, no invoicing. I mean, all this, the stuff was honestly hair-rising. I mean, the report is, I think, 58 pages long. There was also mention of tactical steel, of course. There was mention of what happened with the Umrah, the pilgrimage to Mecca. It was basically a catalogue of quite catastrophic lapses in the basic rules of accountancy. PwC is not a forensic police organization. It is an accountant. So basically what they did is that they laid bare what actually, to be honest, most of us were already aware of, but that it was a complete mayhem. To be honest, whether this dates from Mr. Ahmad or from before Mr. Ahmad, I think a lot of it is inherited and had become systemic in CAF. But let's put it that way, it certainly hadn't improved under Mr. Ahmad's presidency. And the examples which were taken by PwC to show the mess that the African football finances were in were taken from his reign, basically. It's basically a mess. And what PricewaterhouseCoopers did was they basically came across the proofs of what everybody had known for quite a long time, that the finances of CAF had to be straightened and very, very quickly if African football was not to suffer even more from its mismanagement.
And as if to highlight FIFA incompetency even more, at the time that the audit came out, Fatma Samoura, the Secretary General of FIFA, had recently returned from time spent in Cairo, temporarily managing CAF. Why was this?
Well, there are two different ways of looking at it. One of them is to say that it was a decision taken by Mr. Ahmad, who became aware of the fact that there was no way he could sort out this mess without outside help, and therefore asked for the might of FIFA to come in and it was basically a takeover. That's one school of thought, which means that Ahmad appealed to FIFA, and FIFA, said, yes, of course we'll help you, my dear. The other is, of course, FIFA saying to Mr. Ahmad, listen, this can't go on. What you're doing is you completely lost control, you need some help, and we'll provide it. It paved the way for Ahmad's downfall because Fatma Samoura, when her mission came to an end, 6-month mission, it was very clear in FIFA's mind that the 6 months should be followed by another period of 6 months. But then Ahmad rebelled against that and basically said, no, it's not going to happen. And that was when FIFA got really angry with Mr. Ahmad. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Mr. Ahmad's ban is a direct consequence of this act of rebellion, which doesn't mean that the facts or the allegations or the accusations are untrue and unfounded. Both can be true. It can be that Mr. Ahmad was indeed guilty of serious breaches of the code of ethics, whilst it can also be true that the reason why he was banned was not really those breaches, but the fact that he was somebody that FIFA wanted to get rid of.
Are you a fan of football today? Why not support the show and sign up to our new Patreon page? You'll get access to bonus episodes, full and unedited interviews, and lots more extra content. To join us, just visit patreon.com and search for Football Today. Now back to today's episode. How much of a setback is this for the Confederation of African Football?
The actual ban, I don't think, constitutes necessarily a huge setback for the organization. I mean, there have been so many changes at the head of the Confederation. When you think about it, the Secretary General left, his successor left as well. It's been a complete mess in the communications department where people have been following each other through the exit door. They've lost the finance director. The whole administration has been eviscerated, basically. So there is need for a period of rest and reflection, I think, which will come after the election. The next 3 months, it's a period of political campaigning in which nothing much can be done. What I hope is that whoever arrives at the head of CAF, will have genuine mandate to change things and to put in place, I think, a new structure. It's not going to be easy because a lot of the problems are systemic. There are so many fault lines in the continent. I mean, CAF is probably, I think of all the confederations, the ones in which you have, it's very fragmented. First of all, you've got all the regions, which is actually one thing that Ahmad wanted to have, regional competitions. For East Africa and for Southern Africa, then for the Maghreb, you carry on like that. And there are some blocks, but even within these blocks, I can tell you Algeria and Morocco are not exactly on the same hymn sheet here, or Tunisia for that matter, and Mauritania. You can carry on like that. There is so much division, which is a big problem. And obviously what we all dream is a kind of Pan-African candidate who will be able to reconcile the French-speaking world with the English-speaking world and the Arabic-speaking world. I wish I were more optimistic, but I think what will be needed would be a period of reflection in which, in a perfect world, FIFA's help would be absolutely essential because the money that FIFA can distribute to the MAs and member associations makes a huge difference, for some of these nations. They're so devoid of means, but for that, it will need an overhaul of the whole system.
Ahmad Ahmad was originally Gianni Infantino's man and made a stand on anti-corruption before he came into power in 2017. Does that mean that this whole affair is starting to look quite embarrassing for Infantino?
I don't know if embarrassment is the word. I think it's problematic, yes. I'm wondering if he hasn't taken on or bitten more than he can actually chew. FIFA is taking a big risk here. We've got to remember that CAF is 54 members, so it's the second largest confederation after UEFA in terms of votes in FIFA world. So for decisions such as choice of president. And I think that rubbing it the wrong way is which FIFA has done, and not just with what's happening with Mr. Ahmad, but also with the proposals that were made in the winter of 2020 by Gianni Infantino about the reform of the African Cup of Nations. Various clashes about women's competitions in Africa. What about the African, club league or whatever, and to create another competition? What about African clubs, being integrated in Infantino's great scheme, which is the Club World Cup? You could carry on like that. There were a number of fault lines between the Confederation and Infantino. And I'm not necessarily sure that falling like a ton of bricks on the head of Mr. Ahmad at the time that it's been done is necessarily going to endear Mr. Infantino and FIFA to many African voters. It's a risky game. It's a fascinating one, and which is going to play out very quickly because remember, 12th of March 2021, we'll know who the new president of CAF is. There's very little time there.
Ahmad's ban means 5 of FIFA's 6 global confederations have had to replace leaders accused of ethical violations since 2015. Where do you think FIFA is going so badly wrong in the last half decade?
I think it went wrong way before that. The problem is that when there is more money circulating in the game, there are more opportunities for corruption. And I think that throughout Blatter's reign, Blatter decided to turn a blind eye to what was happening. He basically passively encouraged, if there's such an expression, what is happening now. So the rot, the poison was there. it didn't act on it. Once the poison has started circulating in the bloodstream, there's very little you can do about it. It just multiplies naturally. Just think about the whole business of attributing, finding who the host country for the World Cup was, and the fact when you give this decision to a group of under 30, 60 years old plus men who are all part of the same clique, who all travel to the same 5-star hotels, fly first class, you carry on like that. And this corruption, it's a byproduct of football success, really, and unwillingness from the people who are controlling it at the highest level to actually do much about keeping the lid on things. But football is not the only one. Look at the Olympic movement. Believe me, if you want to look at corruption, just don't look any further than the story of the Olympic movement. It's absolutely phenomenal. And again, it went hand in hand with the fact that money came into the game, into the games, I should say. And when this happens, suddenly the opportunities are there to put money in your own pocket. And also the way it happens, because a lot of the money circulates through its broadcasting rights, and broadcasting rights are absolutely fantastic means to actually dispense money to people who help you. Some of it is brown paper envelopes, but it's much simpler to do what we have seen was done for the TV rights in South America and Central America at the FIFA Gate trial in Brooklyn, where basically you give the rights to an agency which sells them on to another agency on the same day for 3 times the amount. Okay, what happens to this money? Well, heaven knows, because it's all registered in the Cayman Islands. I paint with a white brush, but basically what I paint is a picture of what has happened for a long time. And you might say that it's no longer the case. It's much more open now, only up to a point. I mean, I cannot, for obvious reasons, name the actual federation, but I know of one federation in the AFC this time, which received something like 8 goal awards. I mean, the goal awards, you're talking £500,000, £1 million, whatever. 8 of those, not a single of these projects saw the light of day. Not one. So which means that all this money disappeared down the plug hole, which led directly to the pockets of this particular FA's president and his cronies. So this is where we are. But, the reason why things went wrong is simply because there was a lot of money circulating, and money which was easy to distribute and hide and corrupt people with and embezzle, and very little control. I mean, why is it that all these stories have come to the light? Some of it is the work of reporters and investigative journalists, but most of the work has been done by the FBI, to be honest, and not by FIFA, which has had a chamber of ethics for a number of years. I will say it that way. It's very rare that the chamber of ethics comes across a case that hasn't been publicized in the media beforehand. That's the way I would put it.
Ahmad, like so many FIFA presidents before him, ran on an anti-corruption ticket. Does FIFA need to become wise to these saviour types who, within a few years, are just as corrupt as their predecessors?
I wouldn't make accusations like that, because that would be completely irresponsible from me. I mean, not everybody who works in football is corrupt. Not all the mechanisms are corrupt. Not all the work that FIFA does is awful. Actually, I think, for example, what they're trying to do in terms of contracts, transfers, and so forth is really laudable. In terms of health as well and education, there are loads of initiatives from FIFA which should be applauded. It's far too easy to say, a bit like people say, all politicians are corrupt. No, that's not true. The same way to say, FIFA is all bad. No, it's not true. There are things which FIFA does which are excellent. There are things which CAF does which are excellent. You have to be more nuanced. On the other hand, what I would say is that, personal opinion, quite happy to defend it. At the moment, FIFA is run like a dictatorship. And that's the problem. At the moment, it's all top-down. And that's new. There was a measure of independence, actually quite a great deal of independence of the Confederation, certainly, under the regime of Sepp Blatter. What we're seeing is FIFA directly interfering in confederations and federations' affairs in a way that perhaps it didn't in the past. And there are so many examples. Just by chance, so happens that the best examples of that are in CONCACAF, that is Central and North America, Caribbean, and CAF, which is Africa. And we're talking about loads of federations here. We're talking, not very far from 100 member associations in total, which basically are, to me, it seems that they run like a personal fiefdom by FIFA. They suspend, normalize, decide not to do a thing. I mean, there's an example, Kenya FIFA has been asked specifically by the highest court in the land of Kenya to intervene and normalize the current football association, the FKF. What has FIFA decided? Nothing. On the other hand, you see what happened with Trinidad and Tobago. Bang, bang. They were suspended within months of their coming to power because they were seen as a threat. And there are many other examples throughout. This is for me the biggest problem. You talk about corruption, but there are different kinds of corruption. Intellectual corruption is another one. Moral corruption is important. When football is run with the stick of possible sanctions and bans and the carrot of grants, you have a regime which is honestly not the regime that football deserves, that African football deserves, or any kind of football deserves. The way FIFA runs it doesn't make me extremely optimistic to see genuine changes in the future. We'll see, the current regime won't stay in place forever. It could be that events force its hand. It could be that we see other people emerging in other confederations and so on. But the system at the moment just doesn't work properly. FIFA shouldn't be a dictatorship. It shouldn't impose its will as it does at the moment and see itself as above the laws. I mean, this is really uncalled for.
Philippe Auclair is the England correspondent for France Football. He also has an album, Thunderclouds, out on December the 11th under the moniker Louis Philippe and the Night Mail. The music for this episode is provided under the Creative Commons license by Blue Dot Sessions, and the details for the individual songs can be found in the show notes. This episode was produced by myself and Josh Schneiderweiler. I'm John Mackenzie. Thanks for listening to Football Today.